In our previous episodes, we traced the colonial origins of the border and the 1962 conflict that set the stage for modern tensions. Today, we focus on the Galwan Valley, where a decades-long stalemate erupted into the most significant military clash between India and China in over 40 years. This incident remains a defining moment in 21st century geopolitics, fundamentally altering the security architecture of the Indo-Pacific region and ending a long-standing period of relative stability along the Himalayan frontier. Following the June 15, 2020, confrontation, the immediate aftermath saw a rapid, unprecedented military buildup, with both nations deploying tens of thousands of troops, heavy artillery, and advanced air assets to the high-altitude desert. The bravery of the Indian soldiers at Patrol Point 14 was officially recognized through numerous gallantry awards, including the Mahavir Chakra, reflecting the gravity of the engagement and the high cost of defending the nation's perceived territorial integrity. This action fundamentally shifted the strategic calculus, forcing a transition from a policy of border management to one of active, permanent deterrence and massive infrastructure acceleration in the Ladakh sector. For the local population, the conflict brought immediate disruption, with grazing lands restricted and a pervasive sense of insecurity replacing the traditional seasonal movements across the high-altitude passes. The Galwan Valley, a narrow, high-altitude gorge connecting the Shyok River to the Aksai Chin Plateau, became the epicenter of a crisis that challenged the very definition of the line of actual control. Today, memorials and military records in both Leh and Beijing serve as permanent reminders of the lives lost, though the narrative surrounding the event remained deeply polarized and contested. A lesser-known fact is that the 1993 and 1996 agreements, designed to prevent the use of firearms, were strictly adhered to, which ironically forced the combatants into a brutal, hours-long hand-to-hand fight. Compared to the 1962 conflict, which involved full-scale conventional warfare, the 2020 crisis was characterized by gray zone tactics, where physical skirmishes replaced traditional artillery barrages to avoid crossing the threshold of open war. Documentation from the time shows that the Indian Army's 16 Bihar Regiment bore the brunt of the initial surge, their actions becoming central to the national discourse on border defense and military preparedness. The families of the fallen soldiers have since become symbols of national resilience, with their units maintaining a constant, vigilant presence at the site of the clash to ensure the status quo is never again violated. Following the June 15 tragedy, key dates include the July 2020 disengagement talks and the subsequent multi-year military negotiations that have yet to resolve the underlying territorial disputes. The story of Galwan inspires a renewed focus on national security, emphasizing that in an era of global uncertainty, the defense of sovereign borders remains the primary duty of the state. The ultimate lesson is that without a mutually agreed-upon map of the line of actual control, the risk of accidental escalation remains an ever-present reality in the high Himalayas. This concludes our deep dive into the Galwan crisis, but our series continues as we examine the broader implications for the Depsang Plains and the future of the Indo-China relationship. We leave you with the sobering reality that the Galwan Valley remains a silent witness to a border dispute that continues to shape the strategic destiny of two nuclear-armed neighbors. The records utilized for this investigation include official statements from the Indian Ministry of External Affairs and the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, alongside satellite imagery analysis from the Center for Strategic and International Studies. In April 2020, the People's Liberation Army began massing significant infantry and mechanized units near the Depsang, Gagra, and Hot Springs sectors, signaling a departure from previous seasonal patrolling patterns. By May 2020, the construction of the Darbak-Shyok-Dalit Beg Oldie Road had reached a critical stage, providing India with unprecedented logistical access to the Karakoram Pass and threatening perceived Chinese tactical depth. The Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, through spokesperson Zhou Lijian, claimed in June 2020 that the Galwan Valley was historically undisputed Chinese territory, a claim rejected by Indian historians citing the 1962 patrol records. The 1959 LAC alignment proposed by Zhou Enlai was categorically rejected by India at the time, as it encompassed vast swathes of territory, including the entirety of the Galwan Valley, within Chinese administrative control. The 1962 Sino-Indian War saw the Galwan Valley become a primary flashpoint, with Indian forces maintaining a consistent, if sparse, administrative presence in the region for several decades following the ceasefire. The 1993 Agreement on the Maintenance of Peace and Tranquility along the LAC remains the cornerstone of the bilateral framework, yet it lacks the specific, demarcated maps required to prevent localized territorial friction. The 1996 Agreement on Confidence-Building Measures further restricted the use of firearms within 2 kilometers of the LAC, a provision that directly influenced the nature of the 2020 physical confrontation. The 2005 Protocol on Modalities for the implementation of confidence-building measures was intended to provide a mechanism for resolving misunderstandings, yet it proved ineffective during the rapid escalation of April and May 2020. The altitude of the Galwan Valley, approximately 4,300 meters above sea level, creates extreme physiological challenges for troops, making any prolonged standoff a test of both endurance and logistical supply chain efficiency. The DSDBO road, spanning 255 kilometers, is a vital strategic artery that allows for the rapid movement of troops from LAC to the northernmost reaches of the Ladakh border. Satellite imagery from 2020 provided by SAIS clearly showed the construction of new Chinese bridge structures and permanent bunkers, which India interpreted as a deliberate attempt to alter the status quo. The 20 Indian soldiers who lost their lives on June 15, 2020, were part of a patrol led by Colonel B. Santosh Babu, who was posthumously awarded the Mahavir Chakra for his leadership. China officially admitted to the loss of 4 PLA soldiers in February 2021, a delay that sparked significant international debate regarding the transparency of the Western Theater Command's reporting. The LAC is a 3,488-kilometer-long de facto border that remains the most significant unresolved territorial issue in Asia, lacking any formal, mutually accepted demarcation on the ground. The Depsang Plains remain a critical, unresolved friction point where Chinese blockades prevent Indian patrols from reaching traditional points, further complicating the ongoing disengagement negotiations between the two nations. The government of India maintains that the LAC is not a matter of negotiation but a fixed line that China has repeatedly attempted to shift through incremental, localized incursions. The government of China argues that India's infrastructure development is the primary provocation, claiming that the DSDBO road encroaches upon what it defines as the 1960 LAC alignment. The Brookings Institution's research on the Galwan crisis highlights the salami-slicing tactic, where small, incremental changes are made to the border to avoid triggering a full-scale conventional war. The Observer Research Foundation has documented how the competition for border infrastructure has created a security dilemma, where defensive measures by one side are perceived as offensive threats by the other. The lack of a common map is the fundamental, structural cause of the dispute, as both sides rely on different historical cartographic records to justify their claims to the valley. The 2020 to 2024 Corps commander-level talks have resulted in partial disengagement at several points, yet the fundamental lack of trust prevents a comprehensive resolution of the border dispute. The militarization of the LAC is now at its highest level in history, with both nations maintaining permanent, year-round deployments in areas that were previously only patrolled during the summer months. The economic interdependence between India and China has been strained by the border crisis, leading to increased scrutiny of Chinese investments in the Indian technology and infrastructure sectors. The geopolitical shift in the Indo-Pacif has seen India move closer to the Quad security dialogue, partly as a response to the perceived threat from the northern border. The Galwan Valley incident serves as a case study in how localized border disputes can rapidly escalate into national-level crises, affecting the broader stability of the Asian continent. Historians agree that the Galwan Valley was a gray zone, where the LAC was perceived differently by both sides, but India's consistent patrolling presence provided a clear basis for its administrative claim. The resolution of the border dispute will likely require a level of political will that has been absent for decades, as both nations prioritize territorial sovereignty over regional cooperation. The memory of the 2020 clash continues to influence the domestic political landscape in India, driving a surge in nationalist sentiment and a commitment to military modernization. The international community watches the LAC with concern, recognizing that any further escalation between these two nuclear-armed powers would have devastating consequences for global trade and regional security. As we look toward the future, the stability of the Himalayan frontier remains the most critical variable in the long-term trajectory of the India-China relationship. In our next episode, we will examine the strategic importance of the Depsang Plains and why this area remains the most significant, unresolved obstacle to a lasting peace on the border. We thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the events of 2020, and we invite you to subscribe for the remaining episodes in our series on the India-China border dispute. Our investigation into the Galwan Valley confirms that the incident was not an isolated event but the violent culmination of decades of unresolved border disputes and shifting strategic doctrines. Each beat of this story underscores the necessity of rigorous, evidence-based analysis when navigating the complex and often opaque history of the Himalayan territorial conflict between these two regional powers. The sacrifice of the 20 Indian soldiers remains a central pillar of the national narrative, serving as a reminder of the human cost inherent in the defense of high-altitude sovereign territory. The ongoing military presence at the LAC ensures that while the immediate crisis of 2020 has passed, the underlying causes of the friction remain as potent and dangerous as they were 4 years ago. We close this episode with a commitment to continue our series, bringing you the clarity and historical depth required to understand the defining geopolitical challenge of our time.